Welcome. It is time for Constitution Study Television Constitution Classes, Lesson 1.2, the Preamble. And since we have canceled the live classes for now in Corona and Temecula, I decided to start putting them online. A lot of folks have been wanting me to do this anyway, so it serves a couple purposes. For those of you who want to help fund what I do, don't forget, go to douglasvgibbs.com or politicalpistachio.com and use the yellow donate button. I am Douglas V. Gibbs, and let's get into it here. Okay, so we've got the preamble of the United States Constitution, and if you want to recite it, it's funny because when I first came across the preamble of the United States Constitution, I was just a kid. And what was that called? Schoolhouse Rock. Schoolhouse Rock was a thing. And for the longest time, I could not recite the preamble without singing it because of Schoolhouse Rock. It's funny. I was at a Los Angeles 62nd Congressional District thing, I think it was, one time. And I only had a couple of minutes to speak. It was a candidate meet and greet about 4 years ago, I think it was, or 6 years ago, actually. And since I had so little time, I decided that reciting the preamble and having a couple words about it would be my speech. And I invited the group of about 200 people to join me to begin reciting it. And we, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility. And I'm going through that, and only one person is reciting it with me in the crowd. Everybody else, they don't know it by heart. They're kind of, you can see them, they're trying to get a few words in, and they're not quite, only one person. And she was up in the front, and she was probably the eldest person in the group. Because those of us a little bit older had to learn to recite it in school when we were younger. And we remember that. And the younger crowd, not so much. But also, I want to break down the language, because the language of the preamble, let me get my pocket constitution here. For those of you who are playing along here, this is the pocket constitution you want. If I tell you go to a certain page, it's going to be this pocket constitution. You can get it at the nccs.net. If you don't have one of these, but you have a different type of constitution, that's okay. You just won't be able to do it by page number. Might not correlate. But we are on the preamble. So page 1, which is about third or fourth page in, actually. There's some Roman numeral pages. And then page 1 is the preamble. So that's what we're going to be talking about. Preamble, now let's get to the nitty-gritty here. The preamble is an introduction to the Constitution. Interestingly enough, a lot of people don't know this. It was actually written after the Constitution. In other words, after they wrote the whole Constitution, they said, we need a preamble, and then they wrote it afterwards. It was an afterthought. The introduction to the U.S. Constitution is not legally binding. So the terms in it, while it is an introduction, they're not the actual legally binding clauses of the Constitution. It is an introduction explaining why the Constitution was written, which in other words means why was the federal government established through this Constitution. That's the point of the Constitution, is to establish a federal government and a new system in which the federal government is the centralized feature, but not necessarily a powerful central government. And we'll get into that as we move on. So what we read here, once again, it's not legally binding, but it is an introduction. Well, like you go to the doctor's office, and the doctor gives you a form that says, "I, the patient, allow the doctor to do this, this, and this," and that's your preamble and your Constitution, so to speak. The doctor can't do anything more than what you signed for. The beginning of it, though, was just the introduction. I, patient's name. We, the people of the United States. In order to, now we're going to give authority to this new federal government, just like you're giving authority to the doctor in that form you signed. But that you don't sign the form and say they're going to, check out your liver and your kidney, and then they start doing, nose, throat, and ears. So wait a second. That's not what I signed. What if the doctor said, well, yeah, but we interpreted it, that's what you meant. Well, no, that's not the way it works. Words mean something. And so with the preamble, that's the introduction, and then the Constitution itself, that's the contract, a social contract that gives the federal government certain authorities, like you're given the doctor authorities regarding what he's allowed to do on your doctor's visit with that form. Or another way of explaining it, this is something I use a lot in my speeches, is let's say you've got a contractor you hire to add a new room to your house. And they come in and they give you an estimate and they figure out the materials that are going to be needed, grade 8 bolts or whatever. And so you're all excited. The crew, the supervisor says crew will be showing up real soon. We'll get it started. And they show up and they start getting to work and they're setting up. And you're like, all right, this is great, man. I'm going to get my new room. So you go to lunch and you come back and the crew's not working on the new room. They're out front and they're mowing your lawn and they're sweeping your walk and they're cleaning your gutter. You walk up the foreman and you say, hey, I didn't hire you to do my landscaping. I hired you to add a room to my house. And then the supervisor says, well, yeah, that's true, but we also went back over the contract and we interpreted it to mean that we could do this also. And we're going to charge you extra for it. And don't worry, it's on the up and up. Our lawyers say so. And at that point, you're like, oh, okay, right? No, of course not, because you know it's in the contract, and you know that landscaping is not a part of the contract. Well, that's kind of the way the Constitution is. It authorizes the federal government to have certain authorities to add the room or whatever, right? And then they have come back and said, oh, well, you know what? We've decided that we can also do this and we can do that. Even though it's not in the contract, we've interpreted the contract to mean that we can. We're going to charge you extra, through tax dollars. But don't worry, our lawyers say it's on the up and up, the federal court system. And at that point you say, oh, okay, right? Well, unfortunately, yeah, a lot of Americans have. And that's not the case. And so the Constitution was established to give the federal government limited authorities to handle only certain things, like the contract with that contractor. You're only here to do this, this, and this. You're not here to clean my walk. You're not here to mow my lawn or whatever. This is a breakdown of the preamble. And you'll notice that the preamble is broken down into 4 parts. The first part being the introduction, then the reasons, the results, and the conclusion. So we the people of the United States, in order to. That's the introduction. The words in order to are telling you, all right, this is going to have a list of reasons afterwards. What are we doing this in order to for? We the people of the United States, in the last lesson I explained with we the people, that doesn't that was derived originally from the Magna Carta, the barons and ultimately the freemen, we the freemen, we the people of the United States. Now that does not mean this is a democracy. While it is for the people of the United States, it also is we the people of the United States, or of these states that are united. It's also for the states. So I want to emphasize that. This wasn't written just for us. It was written for the states. State sovereignty, to protect the states' rights as much as our rights. I shouldn't say protect, really to secure our rights. We'll get into that. And so the introduction of the preamble, we the people of the United States, in order to, that introduction shows us there's some reasons. And there are 4 reasons that are in the preamble. We the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, assure domestic tranquility, and provide for the common defense. All right? Notice that promote the general welfare and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity is not on the reasons side. Those are results. We'll get to that. So the first reason, form a more perfect union. What does that mean? What was wrong with the union? I mean, and notice they say a more perfect union. They thought the union was perfect. They thought it was a good thing. They thought that they'd done a good job with the Articles of Confederation. But to be honest with you, it was a quickly thrown together document during the war to give the states something to fight for, their unity as a country. And then as what happened was in 1786, something happened called Shays' Rebellion. Shays' Rebellion, in which the American Revolutionary veterans had been paid with money printed by the Continental Congress under the Articles of Confederation, but the money was basically worthless. The worthless money didn't have any value behind it. They just printed it. And paper money already had a bad name anyway at that point. And so the creditors, the people who the veterans from the Revolution were owed money to, So, hey, we'll take Continentals, we'll take gold, we'll take silver. We're not going to take that garbage. That paper money's worthless to us. And so the veterans are like, oh, wait a second. We have this money we can't use. We got bills we got to pay. What's going on here? This country wouldn't be a country if it wasn't for us. We're the ones that fought the war. And what wound up happening is the creditors began to go to the courts to sue the veterans to force them to pay. So the veterans got together in the protest and they began to block the steps of the courthouses to stop their creditors from filing the lawsuits. And they also did things like try to get into the armory in Springfield, Massachusetts, so on and so forth. This was a big deal. And the people in the Continental Congress are like, hey, states, get your militias out there to stop this from happening. And the states are like, what are you talking about? It's our militias that are protesting. Why don't you do something about it? Well, we can't, because we can't put together an armed force. That's a state authority only. What do we do here? We can't tax the people to form a group to get this under control. What wound up happening is the merchants out of Boston put together a mercenary force. That mercenary force showed up and they started shooting at the veterans, breaking up that protest, breaking up that rebellion. Shays Rebellion. Now imagine that in today's society. Imagine our veterans, our Vietnam veterans, our Cold War veterans, our veterans from the Middle East fighting that we've been doing over the last, good gosh, most of my life. And when those guys are out there upset about something, they were protesting. The government didn't do anything about it. They didn't negotiate, didn't talk to them. No, nothing was going on, and suddenly the corporations put together a mercenary force. This mercenary force showed up and started shooting at our veterans in the streets. How would you feel? You'd be pretty upset. That's what was happening. Now, in August of 1786, some of the folks that would wind up framers of the U.S. Constitution were at the Annapolis Convention. A few of the states were represented, but not all of them. And they were aware of what was going on with the Shays Rebellion. And they talked about it and said, hey, we got to do something here. Apparently, our system of government, our union is not perfect. We need to make it more perfect. How do we form a more perfect union? We need to fix the Articles of Confederation. So the idea was they were going to get together in May of 1787 in Philadelphia, and they were going to have a convention to fix the Articles of Confederation. I think at the time, a lot of those guys knew there was no fixing those articles. And so what wound up happening is a new Constitution was written. And it turned out to be the greatest document aside from the Holy Bible in the history of this world. But nonetheless, that Constitution was written to form a more perfect union, something that could deal with something like Shays Rebellion and other things. The Articles of Confederation had fallen short. They had created a lamb that was too weak to handle anything. What we needed was a lion. But here's the problem. Lions eat people. When word got out they wanted to create a bigger government with this Constitutional Convention, people got nervous. Hey, wait, we just fought big government in the Revolutionary War. What are you talking about? Why do we want to create big government? That's dangerous. It's the reason why we have a lamb. Lambs don't eat you. You're talking about creating a lion. Lions eat you. Lions are tyrannical. Lions kill. So how do you create this lion without creating a dangerous, tyrannical, big government that kills and eats people like lions do? You put it in a cage. You put it in shackles. Here's the cage. Here's the shackles. This pocket constitution. The United States Constitution. That's the shackles. That's the cage. Okay. So first of all, it's established to form a more perfect union. Establish justice. Now, when you think of the word establish, this is number 2 on your list of reasons. When you think of the word establish, what do we mean? What do you mean establish? Well, think about the word in itself. It means to create or to form, to make into something that wasn't there before. Did the system that we were under have justice? Yes. All the states had their own court systems. So justice in general was not being established. State courts weren't being established. They were going to establish something that didn't exist before, a federal court system. Number 3, ensure domestic tranquility. When I talk about this part of it, I talk about when I was a kid. I grew up with two siblings, a brother and a sister, both younger than me. My brother was 9 when I moved out, so he was more of an irritant than anything else. I didn't even get to really know who he was or what he was until later on in my adult years. I went through the Navy and stuff, and he was still just kind of an irritant. But my sister and I were closer in age, 4.5 years apart. She and I, we gave each other a heck, our entire childhood. And we used to beat each other up and scratch and bite and pull hair and everything else. And about the time I moved out, and I was not there to give her heck anymore, my brother was old enough, and he started giving her heck. So poor Lisa, she was in the middle of the two of us, and she just got it from both ends. And I remember one time in my life, my mom was going through my hair, and she was noticing that I had bald spots. So she calls over my dad, and Jerry, come over here. Take a look at this. Doug's got bald spots. They were concerned. They thought I was losing my hair. No, I wasn't losing my hair. My sister was ripping so much hair out of my head when we were fighting that it was creating bald spots. We fought like cats and dogs. But I tell you what, if there was a bully picking on my sister, Big Brother was willing to take care of business. So while we fought like cats and dogs, only I could pick on her. Nobody else could. She's my sister. States are kind of the same way. When it came time to unify for the Revolutionary War, they were there for each other. At first they weren't. In the beginning, you notice everything was Massachusetts War. The Boston Tea Party, the Boston Massacre, Lexington and Concord. It all was happening in Massachusetts. And the other states, or actually colonies at that point, were like, wow, Massachusetts got a real problem. Hope we don't get dragged into that. Didn't take long for them to realize if it's happening to one, it could happen to all. And the Articles of Association, which they had all joined together in to boycott British goods, make them really all complicit. And so they were all targets. So eventually they did unify, Declaration of Independence, Articles of Confederation. They had to unite to beat the British Empire. They had to unite in order to survive a war with the greatest military power the world had known at that point. So they understood the importance of being united, but at the same time, they were like siblings. They fought like cats and dogs. There was protectionist laws when it came to trading between the states. They fought over turf, boundary lines, everything. They fought like cats and dogs. Establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility. Ensure domestic tranquility, make sure there's peace between the states. Finally, the fourth one. So we got number 1, form a more perfect union. 2, establish justice. 3, ensure domestic tranquility. Number 4, provide for the common defense. Common defense. The defense of all of them together as a union. They were able to defend themselves individually. They have their militias, their state militias, which were very important during the American Revolution. But what about the common defense? What about a force that's going to defend them together as a group? Well, that's where Army, Navy, and so on and so forth comes in. Provide for the common defense. Those are the reasons for the creation of federal government. Notice they all have to do with preserving, promoting, or protecting the Union. Now, if those 4 things are followed, then the results will be to promote the general welfare. Number 1, promote the general welfare. Not provide, but promote it. And notice in general welfare in your pocket constitution, if you look very carefully there, the word general is lowercase, welfare is capitalized. Welfare is the key word. And what is welfare? And please don't say a check from the government. Welfare is a condition that all's well. A condition of all's well. You ever seen those old movies? All's well, right? Condition of all's well. That's what general welfare is. It's a condition of all's well. Well, what kind of condition of all's well? Well, a general condition of all's well. Everywhere. If the federal government's doing its job, they will be promoting a condition of all's well, general welfare. Number 2, secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. First of all, they're not protecting our blessings of liberty. They're securing our blessings of liberty. As I talked about in the last video, the federal government is the largest threat against our natural rights. They're not there to protect our natural rights. They're there to secure them. Secure, to keep them in place, which is our possession. They were given to us by God for God's sake. Secure the blessings of liberty. What are the blessings of liberty? They are our natural rights to ourselves and our posterity. Now look at those two words, ourselves and our posterity. See the difference? Posterity is capitalized, ourselves is lowercase. What that means, that the founding fathers were saying, because you got to understand, they didn't italicize back then. They weren't, typing up the Constitution and then they hit, Control I for italicize. They were handwriting it, and I guess italics and handwriting, it's going to look the same. So their method for putting emphasis on words often was to capitalize them. So here we have a couple of nouns here, ourselves and posterity. One's capitalized, one isn't. Why? They're putting emphasis on the word posterity. What they're saying is, we did this so that the federal government will secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves, lowercase o, but we're doing it especially so that it secures the blessings of liberty for you, those yet to be born. Posterity, capital P. They signed the Constitution for you. They wrote this for those who would be born later. Future America. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. So if those first four, form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, and provide for the common defense, are properly maintained by the federal government based on the authorities given to it, vested in it, granted to it, then the results will be that there will be a general sense of all's well throughout the country and our natural rights will be secured. Then you have the conclusion. To ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. Boy, if ever I've ever seen biblical language, I tell you. Ordain and establish. This Constitution for the United States of America gives us a good snapshot of the whole reason behind the writing of the document, the United States Constitution. This is where the handout comes in. Once again, if you go to politicalpistachio.com, there's a link in the information area for this video. There's a link to Political Pistachio where I have this video also on that website, but also below that is the handout. Copy and paste it, print it. If you realize, oh gosh, you know what? I don't have a handout or I can't print. That's okay. Buy my book, Basic Constitution. Go to see up there, right there. Doug's Books, douglasvgibbs.com/books.php. Go there, find Basic Constitution, the white one. Click on that one. Find it on Amazon or barnesandnoble.com, but I think my link is to Amazon. And buy the book. That is my handouts in a book form. Glossary, index, everything you need. But anyway, in the handout, I talk about something in this particular lesson called original authority, and I want to go over this real quick. Original authority means that all the authorities originally belonged to the states. The states held all authority prior to the Constitution. They were their own little countries, and they had a loose-knit confederation under the Articles of Confederation. The only thing that the Continental Congress really had the power to do was declare war. The states pretty much had power over everything else. They wanted to hang on to their autonomy as little countries, but at the same time they realized they needed to be united. How do you create a country of united, autonomous, sovereign states? You create a federal government, a federation of states. But you remember that all of the powers originally belong to the states. Then you enumerate certain authorities to that federal government. The way the Constitution works is if the authority is enumerated to the federal government, it's a federal power. If it's not a federal power. Well, how do you know if a state has a power? Well, they held all powers prior to the Constitution. All power. So the only way they don't have a power is if it was given or granted to the federal government, or if the Constitution prohibits them from having it for whatever reason. That's essentially what the 10th Amendment says. When we get there, we'll go into more detail. Because the states have original authority. They have the original authority over all issues, all powers. The final reasons for the writing of the Constitution was to secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. The presence of the word blessings reminds us that the Founding Fathers' grateful spirit that the result of the American Revolution and the inspiration for the new federal government could have only come from the favors of divine providence. Liberty, remember, is one of the unalienable rights listed in the Declaration of Independence that has been given to us by the Creator. In fact, this is one of the foundational beliefs of the original intent behind the creation of the federal government. Our rights are granted to us by God, not by government. For if our rights are granted to us by government, government could then be able to take those rights away. This idea of God-granted rights is based on a concept called natural law. And we'll go back to the Declaration of Independence, too. With a firm reliance on divine providence. If you have this one, it's on page 35. I'm sorry, that's the beginning of the Declaration. I'll tell you where the end is. 39. Let me read this real quick, too, so I can get it exactly right. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, our sacred honor. Firm reliance on the protection of divine providence. Christian country. At its foundation. It says so right there in the preamble, blessings of liberty, right? Someone will say, oh, God's not in the Constitution. Well, God's not in the book of Esther either, but it doesn't mean that biblical book doesn't have God all throughout it. You don't see the word God in the Constitution, but God is throughout it. The principles of Judeo-Christian beliefs and values is throughout this document. All right. Anything else? No, that's it. All right. So that's it for the preamble. That's lesson 1.2. We'll go to lesson 2 in the next video. We're going to start with the legislative branch, Article 1. Real quick, just for your information, I'll give you something to look at next week on that. The Constitution is broken down very nicely. Article 1 is the legislative branch. Article 2 is the executive branch. Article 3 is the judicial branch. So next video, we begin with Article 1, legislative powers. Until then, be safe. God bless America. God bless you. United we stand. Together we kick butt. And where we go one, we go all. We'll see you next week. Thanks for watching. Don't forget, subscribe right there. Hit the subscription if you're on the YouTube page. If you're not on the YouTube page, you're watching us at Political Pistachio, go to the YouTube page and subscribe. And then once you subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you know when new videos come out. You'll get an email. And that's kind of nice. Visit Political Pistachio often. And once again, if you appreciate what I'm doing here, at the end of the classes in Temecula and Corona, I pass around a red, white, and blue donation bucket, and folks throw a few bucks in there, a couple of ones, a 5, a 10, a 20. And, it helps fund what I do, helps pay for the gas, helps pay for some of the programs that I use. So, your help would be greatly appreciated. Also, the radio show, which is on KMET 1490 AM every Saturday. It's always in need of funding also. Matter of fact, we're about $1,500 short right now, and we got to get it paid off by, from the taping of this in about 2.5 weeks. So, we're always needing funding. So, I hate having to ask, but that's just the reality of it. DouglasVGibbs.com, PoliticalPistachio.com. Find the yellow donate button. And, PayPal, credit card, whatnot. Do a monthly thing if you want. That helps. I've got 3 or 4 people that do real small monthly amounts. That really help. Until the next video, be safe. We'll see you then.